Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by tournamentpokeredge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, presented by claytoncomic.com. My name is Clayton Fletcher, and I am in serene, safe, beautiful New York City. Happy to be bringing you yet another episode of the world's longest running poker strategy podcast ever. I'm very excited this week. I'm being joined here via Google Meet by a player that I admire and respect very much. He is one of the top players in the history of the European Poker Tour. He's also made the final table of the World Series of Poker main event, where he got fourth place. And he's got over $8 million in lifetime earnings, according to Hendemov. I want you to welcome, for the first time on the podcast, my friend Sylvain Loosli. Sylvain, how did I do with the pronunciation of your name?
No, you did all right. Thanks for the kind introduction.
All right, now you say your name correctly, so I get it right next time.
Yeah, actually, it's pronounced Loosli.
Loosli, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so first off, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Pleasure to catch up.
Yeah.
We haven't seen each other since Vegas, probably.
Yeah, so you and I have hung out together. We have a lot of mutual friends, most notably my bestie, Anton Wig, who is an excellent personal trainer as well as an excellent poker coach. So you and I
in a lot of disciplines, doesn't he?
Yes, he really does, and he's a really good motivator. He kind of gets me in the gym so that I don't end up after 7 weeks in Vegas being as fat as most of the other Americans that you see. But I know you best as a expert zombie hunter. Tell the audience about our zombie hunting experience.
All right, I see what you're referring to. Yeah, I mean, I might have been the highest scorer in that VR game. Right? I mean, you know me, I'm a competitor, so I'm always going to strive for scoring the highest points in any game.
Yeah, so a bunch of us took one day off from the World Series of Poker and went over to this place called Area 15. Which is not too far from the Strip, and they have lots of games and fun things to do. Some of you might know Mega Mart. It's over there. So this was a virtual reality zombie hunting mission. We had full outfits, right? We had like a gun, we had a helmet, we had costumes. It was crazy. We had all these, what do you call them? Motion detectors all over our bodies, and it keeps track of who kills the most zombies. And you absolutely crushed. Do you feel like you were really in the zone that day?
I'm not sure, but I had fun. It was a good experience. Definitely a place to visit if you're in Vegas. Yeah, lots of cool, cool attractions. That's why I love about the city as well there.
Yeah, we had a good time that day. And so, I've been following your career, and I didn't realize that you were involved in the coaching as well. I mean, I feel like every time I look and see what the latest high roller at the EPT or, whatever's going on around the world in poker, your name, pops up so often. And I'm always like, hey, I know that guy. He's a friend of mine. I'm cheering for you. But then I log on to claytoncomic.com and I'm checking out what's going on that day. And they have a live coaching session that I actually talked about a little bit on last week's episode, and I was surprised and thrilled to see that you were actually coaching Cindy Spire on her 3 circuit events that she's won already in 2025. Talk to me a little bit, if you could, Sylvain, about how you ended up getting involved in the coaching aspect of the game.
Yeah, right. So it's kind of like a semi-long story. But yeah, I mean, I've actually been approached by some guy we had mutual friends with, I think it was around 2020.
Okay.
So some guy who created a poker community, had a YouTube channel, only French speaking actually. And he approached me because he wanted to create a masterclass, some content mostly about the mental sides, mental aspect of poker. And he wanted someone, from the industry to basically create some actually strategic content as well. And I kind of like the idea of kind of like giving back to the community and creating some content, putting some content out there of like high quality. So we started working together, and it's kind of like how I really got started with coaching. Cool. And then, fast forward today, we have like basically coaching website, like a big community. And then I also got involved with Faraz, who's a friend of mine. We were basically part of like a study group together for the past few years. Done, lots of study, traveling together, meeting at like a bunch of stops here and there. So yeah, I took the opportunity to do some coaching for Jacka Coaching, and it's been fun. Actually, meet people from like all different type of backgrounds. And I mean, if there's one thing which is, the saying which is really true, it's that you do get to learn by coaching, by teaching people. You do improve your skills as well.
Yeah, for sure, because you're reinforcing things that you already know, perhaps. You're also maybe re-examining your own game a little bit through the lens of somebody else. Obviously, the players that you're coaching, generally speaking, won't be anywhere near your level of poker knowledge or achievement. That's why they're coming to you for coaching. But you can still learn something from somebody who's been in the game a shorter period of time. One thing that helps me in speaking with some of our members at Tournament Poker Edge is just kind of seeing how the newer player might think about a certain spot and help you get into their minds a little bit. And then, of course, as a coach, you're trying to help them get from the mindset that they have now to the mindset that they need to have in order to improve their games. So what are some of the things that you've noticed a lot in your experiences coaching that you think maybe the newer players really struggle with or should focus on first?
That's a good question. But kind of like coming back to what you said, realizing that people approach the game in like a different way. It's actually also kind of good in your understanding of actually how the general population, how like kind of like weak players are gonna approach a variety of situations, right? Because actually you're gonna have like a better understanding and better idea of how to exploit people. So in that way, it's kind of good for your own game. But then I think it's mostly about like you said, I think breaking down concepts into like more digestible chunks of information. Yeah, I mean, I think most people who kind of like take poker, at some point are gonna like sometimes like a good fundamental understanding of a game.
Yeah.
If you don't have like a good baseline, it's going to be hard to kind of like move on to like higher stakes and actually succeed and beat the field. Most of the time, the focus is actually mastering the fundamentals. Just mastering the fundamentals, making sure that you know how to approach your process. Improve your process with your game to become better every day. Most important task, I think, for a coach. Assessing your clients or like user skills and giving them like good methodology so that they can improve their own process, become their own coach. I think that's the ideal goal.
Yeah, to eventually get fired. That's the goal.
At some point. Can't expect them to, to get coaching from you forever anyway.
Yeah, I don't need you anymore. You're done. This is great. I really appreciate the download there and the way you are looking at things. I feel like this is really important for the newer players to understand is that you've got to master the fundamentals first. I think that sometimes because the solver can sort of like, we use GTO Wizard. I always talk about GTO Wizard and how I incorporate it into my study and everything and what an important tool that is. But the GTO strategy, it's almost like starting at the finish line. Like you see, this is what the solver would do. But I think it's more important fundamentally to understand why.
why it is doing something exactly.
Yeah. And so
You should also never start by like looking at the solver, but more like start by asking yourself questions and then seeking for answers, right? Seeking for answers with the tools. If you can't come up with all the answers by your logic,
yeah,
I think that's the right approach. Because I mean, GTO makes sense when you're playing against, very good opponents who have like, very, very, very solid understanding of the game, very solid strategies. Then you have less room for, deviations, for exploits. But against, most humans, you want to, exploit their tendencies and their mistakes. Yeah.
So as you were going through some of those hands with Cindy Spire, I noticed that a lot of the quote unquote mistakes that she was making, in other words, if you put the hands into the solver would be less aggressive in many spots than Cindy was being. And she had her theory behind that, her justification was, I was playing against a bunch of old guys.
Exactly.
Against only
event for reference. Yeah.
Right. And so the players would be more afraid and less likely to defend properly, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is actually one, very fundamental part of poker is like defending against aggression it's tough. It's probably one of the toughest things. And if you want to beat, any stakes, but especially like low stakes, mid stakes, you need to have more aggression in your game and find the right situations where you have like good bluffing frequencies and you're putting pressure on people, especially when it comes to like, late stages of tournaments where people are, going to be a bit more scared. They're going to value their tournament lives more. That's where you can pressure people.
Yeah, that's very well said. Well, I know you have a hand for me, and I did promise you I wouldn't keep you on the phone all day. So I want to get to that. But first, I want to tell my listeners, you've got Faraz Jaka. You've got Sylvain Loosli, whose name I'm now pronouncing better. The people who coach Faraz are on the site as well. So if you really want to work with the people that, have the background and the accomplishments, the accolades, but they also have the knowledge of the game and the ability to explain high-level concepts in terms that you can understand. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah, I can also mention my friend Thomas Boivin. Coach there is also a good friend of mine. We've been, like study partners for many years. He's also like really good at simplifying concepts and making great coaching material.
Yeah, that's a great point because Tomas is not only a crusher, but he's also a great teacher. And that's the rare combination that, for example, if I'm trying to learn how to sing and I just ask somebody who's got a natural, beautiful singing voice, this person might not be able to actually break it down for me. I don't know. I just open my mouth and the beautiful music comes out. Well, that's not going to work for me. I need lessons. Okay. So you kind of need both. You need someone that knows how to play, but also how to teach. And I feel like that's what Faraz is doing really, really well, is hand select.
Faraz himself is also a great coach, obviously.
Yeah, of course. His name's on the site for a reason. And obviously he's had so much success in poker for 2 decades now. But I have a deal for my listeners. You guys can get 20% off a membership. This is the only discount that they're offering right now is through TPE. So just go to jaka.poker/TPE. So that's the promo code TPE. You can just click that link. You get 7 days free and then 20% off, which is substantial savings. And I think you guys will really enjoy it. I'm learning a lot from the website. I really like how the coaches will incorporate the solver into the training, but also kind of separate that from what we're doing theoretically and what we're doing in this real life situation, which unless you're playing a high roller, it's probably going to be fairly different a good bit of the time, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. High rollers and different stakes.
You're playing a ladies only event or a seniors event. It's you might not have to worry too much about what GTO Wizard wants to do facing a 3-bet. You could pretty much just fold.
Yeah, no, exactly. You have to do the tendencies of your of your opponents, of your fields, and they're going to vary a lot depending on on the stakes, depending on even countries. Like playing styles differ quite a lot from like US to Asia, and that's why poker is also so beautiful because variables always evolving, always somewhat different. The game is evolving with all the tools we have available right now. So it's always like a nice, I'd say a nice, mental challenge. That's the beauty of a game. Never perfectly solved, far from it, especially when you play tournaments.
Yeah, and it's never the same game twice, which is what keeps me interested all these years. So what is the hand that you have for me? What tournament is it from?
All right. So it's an online tournament. This was a hand which was submitted to our coaching program. Basically, we have with my partners, we have a French YouTube channel. It's called Kill Tilt. And we have a training program. It goes throughout the whole year. So people sign up at the beginning of the year and they get content every week. And they also get to submit some hands, and get some reviews by the coaches. So I've selected a hand which I thought was interesting because there are different layers, decision points at pretty much every street. So it's our student played the hand on the final table.
And what we can do, if you don't mind, when it's the student's turn to act, before we talk about what the student did, why don't we say what we would do and what kind of things might influence our decisions?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's great. So final table of a €250 buy-in online. So down to 6, we are sitting in the big blind. We have 13 big blind. And we are last in chips, tied with another guy who has also 13 bigs. So the average stack here is 27 bigs. We're facing an open from Hijack. Hijack is with 32 bigs. He's covered by the button. Button has 42 and small blind has 36. Kind of pretty close from the other stacks, but he doesn't have the best opening spot, being covered by the button. And falls to us in the big blind, we have queen 9 off. So there's already a decision point, right? It's do we defend or do we fold?
One thing I can tell you for sure, all my listeners will attest to this, where I really struggle is I don't pay enough attention to ICM. And so this is maybe something that for me personally, for Clayton, is not a strength. It's definitely a weakness of mine.
Yeah, I think that's also something that, most people should focus on when they actually study poker. They do have time to study, because this is where actually you make the most money. It's not in the early stages of a tournament. In the early stages, yeah, if you improve, you're gonna, I guess, be able to build up a stack more consistently. But the big money, the highest stakes, I would say, they are at the end of a tournament when ICM is involved. So every mistake is actually going to cost you a lot of money potentially.
Yeah. So with that in mind, because we have the shortest stack, but only barely. I mean, the guy who's going to be the big blind next has just 1.5 big blinds more than we do or something. I don't know. Maybe should we try to ladder up? Just fold this hand and try to.
Yeah, actually, it's actually a very close spot. So GTO says fold here. Basically, our hand is a little bit too weak. We actually have a lot of risk premium, even though we're last in chips. We're not so far from everyone else, right? If we double up, we're back to the average stack.
Right.
So, it's one reason to be fairly tight. Also facing an opening range here, which is not the widest. It's not a button. It's not a cheap leader opening. So our queen 9 off can actually be dominated, because if he starts, even if he opens a bit too wide, he's going to start opening ace 9 off, king 9 off, type of stuff. Obviously, queen 10 off, queen jack off. So it's not great for a hand. And here, in theory, the bottom of our defending range would be queen 10 off, actually. So first off, our student makes, small mistakes defending queen 9 off.
Right. So you're saying that queen 10 is a defend, but queen 9 is a fold. So it's really right there on the verge of correct. Yeah, got it.
He calls, finds this beautiful flop, queen 9-8 with 2 diamonds, so as a flush draw on board. Checks to the pre-flop raiser, and if he's facing a small c-bet for 1/3 pot.
We don't really have any lead outs on this flop, do we?
Of course not, because we defend into the big blinds. So queen 9-8, we don't have any sets there. We're probably jamming in always queens 9-8. So no reason to lead. We're going to check our whole range.
So we check, and he bets 1.5 big blinds into 5.2 big blinds. So
the effective stack is, so it's 11 big blinds. So it's roughly stack to pot ratio of about 2. So already on other decisions, do we call? Do we slow play with top 2 pairs, keep his bluffs in, or do we just raise and try to get the money in against, a queen, against another pair, against a flush draw.
Yeah, I think if this is okay to shove. Maybe I'm crazy, but the board is so wet. I mean, it's queen of diamonds, 9 of spades, 8 of diamonds. We've got top 2 pair. We would be check raise shoving with so many draws.
Yeah,
it might be difficult for villain to fold anything decent against the shove here because we're going to have a lot of semi bluffs, if you will, in our range.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I think all decisions are on the table basically. I think raising is good because it's quite a dynamic board. So sometimes when our opponent has ace queen, king queen, like has a bad turn or river, and we don't get to kind of like cooler him and take all the money. But at the same time, we block a queen and a 9, so it's less likely that he has actually strong hands. More likely that he has like just ace high, gut shot, something like that. So this is super close. Like in theory, you should like raise sometimes, call sometimes. There's no wrong answer or right answer really here, unless you have like a specific read on your opponents. If you think he's gonna overbluff, like on later streets, then slow playing makes sense. Otherwise, you could raise too.
Okay. I wanted to ask before we continue, if we do raise, it's a shove, right? Are there any other?
Actually, I think you could jam, which is fine because we kind of want to jam some like nut flush draws, some like king eye flush draws. But the solver always also likes, raising non-all-in, probably taking some like weaker bluffs, maybe some like gut shots, and including some super strong hands like ours in like 4.5 big blind raise or something like that.
Okay.
But I think of course jamming is also fine. Anyway, he elected to call and slow play, which is reasonable. And now a turn is the 10 of spades. So it's queen 9 8 10 double flush draw. Not the the turn card we want to see. He checks and he's facing another bet now. 3 big blind into 8.
I mean, this is pretty brutal. We've already put in 25% of our stack with what was top 2 pair, but now the board is queen of diamonds, 9 of spades, 8 of diamonds, 10 of spades. And well, let me ask you this. We did check this turn card. Do we ever want to lead this?
No, I don't think we want to lead. I mean, that's obviously a good question, but I don't think, we have like that many strong hands that we want to start leading. Of course, we have a bunch of straights. We can have like, king jack off, jack 9, 10 9, maybe queen jack is mostly raising the flop. But we also have a bunch of like, one pair hands, some weak flush draws that they want to raise the flop. So you kind of have to protect our range. I think just check everything here because it's just not good enough. Like we would lead on like, for example, a 9, a board pairing because we probably have more 9 than the hijack. Maybe on an 8, but the 10 is not like basically good enough for a range where we can start leading. I don't think.
Right. What about a queen on the turn, Sylvain? Will we check that card as well, or will we lead that one?
I think we probably check a lot because a lot of our strongest queens are going to raise flop anyway, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like it's gives us like a huge advantage as a big blind.
Right. So that would kind of actually be maybe a better card for our opponent's range. Although we would have a full house with that card, but
yeah, exactly. And we also want to keep his bluffs in, right?
Yeah. Okay.
You have to assume he's still gonna have some bluffs.
Okay.
So now we have a clear continue, right? Our hand is just not strong enough to raise. Even though a bunch of rivers can be still tricky to play, but basically against some of his bluffs, we have like still like a lot of equity. Some like ace eyes, some king eyes. They don't have a lot of equity. And against the straight, obviously, we're doing very poorly. So there's no reason to raise.
Yeah, so we're just going to call. Billy had 3 big blinds, and we call.
Yeah. And the river is the 8 of spades. So bringing a backdoor flush, right?
Is this the worst card I can think of? Is this one of the worst cards I can think of for the river?
It's pretty bad for sure. So we check, and obviously we face the all-in. So it's around 6.3 big blind effective into a pot of 14.
Queen of diamonds, 9 of spades, 8 of diamonds, 10 of spades, 8 of spades on the river brings the flush, the backdoor flush, the backdoor straight flush. It pairs the board. Yeah, it's just a brutal card. But
the question comes down to, is our opponent finding enough bluffs? And also, what does he think of our range, right? I think it's very key in that situation is, does he think that we get, to the river with like a bunch of straights still, but we have some flushes as well? So is he going to find enough bluffs, or is he going to, like shut down too much stuff? Like, I don't know, like stuff like ace-7 offsuit, king-6 of diamonds, these kind of hands. Are they going to bluff or shut down now?
And, it's only half the pot, so we're getting 3-1 on a call.
Getting 3-1, but you also have to factor in ICM, actually. That's why it actually gets tricky, because on the final table, when you have to bluff catch for your tournament life here, you kind of have to add the risk premium, which means you're getting actually worse spot odds than if you were playing, a cheap EV spot, like in early game.
Right. Oh, yeah, this is a great hand for you to bring, because there's so much to think about. Let me ask you this. If we don't call here, then what hands do we include in our bluff catching range, if any?
Right. I mean, we're going to have actually some strong hands, right? Because if we slow play Queen-9, we can potentially slow play 9-8. We can slow play Queen-8, always only going to be like the suited versions, right? We have a bunch of straights because we don't necessarily need to, jam our straights on the turn. So King-Jack, nut straight, Jack-10, Queen-Jack, Jack-9. And probably a few flushes as well. Like Queen-X of spades, mainly, would be like we do, get to the river with a bunch of like stronger hands too.
Right. Now, we would have check raised some of those hands, at least some of the time, on the flop.
Yeah.
But that's why it's important for the listeners. This is why it's important to play a mixed strategy and not always, so that you can't ever have Queen-Jack here, right? We talked before that you might check raise Queen-Jack on the flop. Now we want to have it sometimes in our bluff.
Yeah.
We can't always check raise it on the flop, but we never end up with it on the river as played. So
you kind of want to be protected. That's the idea. That's kind of like what GTO can teach us. Is you kind of want to have a bit of everything in your range, especially when you arrive at the river. So your range is a bit protected and probably easier to defend against aggression. When I saw this spot, I just thought that since we do have a bunch of strong hands in our perceived range, I don't think people are gonna go out of their way to find bluffs. I'm not saying that this guy is not finding bluffs on this specific situation, but I do think that it's gonna be. I don't think it's gonna be over bluffing that situation. That's kind of what I'm saying, because the ball looks scary in some ways. It kind of eats our defending range. Fairly decently when we check call flop and turn, right?
Yeah, it really does.
Obviously, we have a bluff catcher. We don't beat any value at this point.
All right. We can't even beat pocket kings anymore.
Yeah, the question is like, is he value betting pocket kings on the river? It's quite thin. I'm not sure whether he's value betting. I think the bottom of his value range is straight. I think we have to agree on that.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, he could show up with like ace jack or something. Yeah.
Yeah, ace jack.
Yeah.
King jack would be like, I think the most common value hands, especially they're going to be offsuit combos, right? So that's obviously more combos. Even though it feels like we set the trap by check calling the flop, sometimes you also have to reevaluate and change your plan when the run out is not in your favor.
Right. Yeah, this is a tough spot. I guess I'm with you. You kind of talked me into it. Originally, I wanted to call.
Calling is reasonable if you're against like a very tough player, because they going to be thinking about this spot and like, I want to find enough bluffs here. I think my opponent still has, some like pair and gut shots, some stuff like maybe King 10, some Queen X, but I can still fold out by the river. For what it's worth, I kind of like looked up this spot in the solver, and our hand was like mostly calling but folding a bit. But then when I looked at the bluffs that the in position player has to find, I think most people would not find all of them. So then it becomes a very clear fold, because I think people are not going to be aggressive enough with the bluffs, like on all streets, on like flop, turn, and river. Stuff like, ace-5 offsuit, ace-7 offsuit with like a spade, this type of stuff. I don't think that necessarily, always bet flop, turn, and river in backline.
And especially when we appear to be fairly pot committed, having put in half our stack already.
Yeah.
So, I think in my experience, people generally don't bluff enough when my stack is already in there because they assume I'm always calling.
Yeah. If they assume you're calling a decent amount of the time, your range is not like super capped. Yes, we didn't raise the flop, but we still show up to the river with a bunch of strong hands. So, I think for this reason, I like the fold, but I can't fold the call either. I don't think it's like super bad to call here.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, for the reference, for the results, the opponent had ace-jack. Our student did call river and ran into it. But I think it was quite an interesting hand.
That's rough. Villain bets 7 big blinds or 6.3 big blinds all in, and Hero calls with queen 9, and then Villain turns over ace-jack with the ace of spades. And you did point that out when you did your solver work on this one, that having a spade changes the bluffing frequency, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's gonna increase the bluffing frequency. If you have the ace of spades, it's a good blocker to have to bluff as well for in position. Also, like, good reason to value bet ace jack there. I mean, I guess you can value bet probably any jack anyway, given the SPR is it's very shallow, it's very small.
Right.
But you're obviously a bit less concerned of like your opponent having a flush.
Yeah, that ace of spades is such a very important card there for that. That's a tough way to go out, flopping top 2 pair as a short stack and still managing to lose the pot.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like one of these spots where, if you don't play so much, you don't get to so many final tables, you might regret like slow playing the flop and say, I should have raised the flop, right? But it doesn't mean that slow playing the flop was a bad decision.
Right.
It's just also probably like one of the worst runouts you can get for your hand. You have to make tough decisions under pressure.
Yeah. Thanks for talking us through that hand. That's really interesting. I will actually run this hand through GTO Wizard for next week's episode, and we can look at all the decision points. We'll use the ICM mode in. We'll really look at what the best course of action is. We'll look how Sylvain actually noticed that queen 9 is a fold, but just barely so because queen 10 is a call, and then each street will do our full analysis. GTO Wizard is actually my favorite tool for analyzing my game. Combining that with Jaka coaching, I feel like I'm just getting better and better every day. If any of the listeners want to try out GTO Wizard, I've got a deal for you there as well. We've got an affiliate link where you can get 24 hours free access and then save 10% off your first purchase, and that is gtowizard.com/p/TPE. All right, Sylvain, thanks for coming on and talking some poker with me today.
Nice to see you. Nice to catch up.
Yeah, before we say goodbye, how can people find you? Are you on Twitter, Instagram? Like, where do you...
I'm on both Twitter and Instagram at Sylvain Loosli. So my first name and my last name. And I do put out some content on Instagram, some reels. So yeah.
Some in French, some in English.
We also have our YouTube channel is called Kill Tilt. So Kill the Tilt, right? Most of the content is in French, but actually some of the reels now is like all translated into English as well. So
that's great, and we will include a link to that YouTube page as well in the description of this podcast. Sylvain, much continued luck and success to you, sir.
Thank you.
Of course, and so for Sylvain Loosli and for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas plays. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart.